Welcome everyone to our Tuesday night chat. This is Kelly Wilkins, your host from My Self-Reliance, and it's so good to have you all here tonight. Tonight we have a special guest speaker. We've got Christopher Smith from Tinderry Mountain Herbs. We're going to learn all about herbs. Welcome, Christopher. So we do have a few announcements before we get started, and we're very excited to have on Monday, we've got the vegetable canning class with Atta in Rouse Hill. So if you're in Sydney, head out to Rouse Hill from 12 to 3. And so vegetable canning, you'll find that on the website at myselfreliance.com.au, and just in time for the school holidays. Then we have in July the summit, the My Self-Reliance Summit. So we're very excited about that. And I've been busy pulling together the best speakers, except for I only just met Chris this afternoon. So otherwise he might have been part of the summit. So there you go. And we have 20 speakers over 10 days, starting on the 17th of July, 2 people a day. So at 12 o'clock each day and 8 p.m., you can jump into live Zooms, grab your early bird ticket till the end of the month for only $58, and you can attend as many live sessions as you like. You can get all the recordings, and then you'll also, on that ticket, be able to pick up the Jigsaw method. It's a 5-morning routine that you do with me, and we take you through how to put together the best pieces so that you set you up for a really powerful day. So that is included in your ticket. Go on the website, you'll find all of that information on there. But without further ado, we want to just hand over to Christopher. And Christopher, tell us how you got started in the world of herbs. And then also for those of us who are not familiar with, working with herbs, we just kind of get familiar with the ones that we come in packets, shake it on your dinner, that kind of, chop it up, sprinkle it. Tell us, you do a whole lot more with the herbs. So I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. Well, it's a long succession of different epiphanies. It didn't all happen on one day in 1 year. It goes, my relationship with plants goes right back to when I was a teenager, and probably way before that. But my auntie gave me a gift of a whole heap of plants in tin cans. And I brought them home, and then I've got these plants. So what do? Well, you build a shade house. So I trooped off, because we lived in the bush in Robe, that's in southeast South Australia. I trooped off into the bush with an axe and started cutting poles and brush, and used recycled wire from the local newsagent, and made my own shade house and put the plants in there, and had a go at growing things, and killed just as many as I grew. And just starting from bare bones, I didn't know a damn thing, and just fiddled around and started growing the plants. And then, of course, you're in high school, the job newspaper comes around, where you go and select the job you're going to do for the rest of your life. So I looked at the thing and saw there's a traineeship with the Adelaide Botanic Garden. And it was already an institution that stood very high in the household, because my mum had a book written by the director of the Botanic Garden, one of the previous directors, Noel Lothian. So I just applied for that, and I got an interview with Dr. Morley, and he quizzed me, of course. I said I was interested in ferns, so he threw me a few curly questions, described to me the life cycle of ferns, which is actually pretty intricate. I passed. He said, look, go back and do year 12 and then come back. It didn't say it as much words, but it was like, you do year 12 and you're a shoo-in. And he was true to his word. And So I moved up to Adelaide, the shy country boy, into the big metropolis. Started work at the Botanic Gardens, and part of the deal was you were there for 3 years. You studied for horticulture certificate with the local TAFE. So I did that. Now, it was there where my first brush with herbs happened. I was with a senior gardener. Les was his name. He was in charge of the rose garden. He was a bit of a character. Anyway, he cut himself this one day and he said, listen, I'm going to show you this plant and I'm going to heal that cut up in 3 days and it'll be, it'll be all healed, done. And he led us over to this comfrey plant that was underneath a tree and showed us how he squeezed the juice from the stem, put it onto his cut, and lo and behold, in 3 days, it was all healed up. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I've got to have some of this comfrey. So, as all training gardeners used to do, and probably still do, you sneak bits of plants, don't you? You borrow bits from the garden. So I took some root home and grew it. And then I bought myself a pot of comfrey cream, and I just used that on everything, totally indiscriminately, because it was just this miracle thing. Any kind of cuts and bruises, courses there. And he said, "Hey, you want to come along? They've got all these courses." So I did a first aid course in homeopathy, and then I did what else did I do? I did a plant alchemy workshop and different things. Gradually that world opened up and we started experimenting with using different herbs. And the real breakthrough was I bought a book by Matthew Wood called The Book of Herbal Wisdom. I don't know if any of you folk know it. It's got about 30 chapters, one herb a chapter. And I read of these herbs in there and I thought, God, these herbs are amazing. Look, what does this do? Solomon seal and sweet leaf and teasel, hierophant. And I said, hey, you guys got any tinctures of these plants, And that was when the two worlds in my brain overlapped. The horticultural experience and this budding, growing herbal knowledge. And it's just like, well, I know this plant, Solomon seal. Why don't I grow it? Started growing it. Then I made some tincture with it, and I actually gave some to one of the herbalists, and he used it in his clinic and had an amazing result with it. So that was the sort of some of the genesis of that. And then I really started to get into the growing to the herbs. So what you might call tried to have the botanical arc tour of everything, which was a bit crazy brave. And I got to about 135 species. And then it just, it collapsed under the weight of its improbableness and impossibility. We had a bit of a drought and I just couldn't manage that many species, which was a good thing in a way because it got me to come back and focus on just a few. So I went to different Matthew Wood seminars and things like that. So I was sort of like hanging around the fringe, and I was in this botanical herbal overlap world. And then I thought, well, I just really need to solidify my place in this herbal world. So I did the advanced diploma in Western herbal medicine, which was great because it gave me such a good, solid foundation in the world. And, we were talking this afternoon, Kelly, about how niched I am. Well, it's taken a while. It all makes sense when you look backwards, but going forwards when you're in it, it seems like you go from one thing to another. And does this work? Does that work? I've really honed my niche now into growing specialist medicinal herbs, doing education about herbs, and have my own skincare range. And I'm still thinking that even that's still too broad. But so I've come to focus on some key herbs, and it's almost like proof of concept growing. So you can see one as my backdrop here, which is golden seal. That's a very iconic herb from North America, endangered herb. Most of the herb that's used to make medicine in Australia is actually imported. And I had that in part of my botanical zoo, and I had, about 8 or 9 pots. And I was at the Hierophant one day, and one of the assistants said to me, you grow golden seal, don't you? Well, we can't get it, can you make some for us or grow some more for us? And this is during, the COVID years when supplies of everything got incredibly erratic. The supply of golden seal just dried up like morning mist. So it was all being used in North America, or there was transport difficulties getting it out here, or, combinations of the above. And it just showed how perilous the supply lines are for some of our key botanical herbs. Like if you said to me,
just for the uninitiated, what, like myself, what do you do with golden seal? What's it?
Sure. Now, golden seal, it's what's called a mucous membrane tonic herb. And what that means is it regulates the tissue state of your mucous membrane. So that's everything from your mouth, your respiratory passages, your whole gastrointestinal tract, right through. So when I say modifies the tone, it means it's keeping those cellular structures there in good health. Now, it's got a broad range of uses with that sort of mucous membrane, but that's its key outline for it. You can also use it topically on sores. It's very effective. So one of the lecturers at Torrens University has this great phrase. She says it heals and seals. Very effective, strong antibacterial properties. And, a long history in herbalism. So, it is a foundational herb in any sort of herbalist's, apothecary. And to have it suddenly disappear is like, wow, that's concerning,
And is it hard to grow?
Not as hard as people would tell you it is. Yeah, it's got a reputation as being hard to grow, but I've found it, once you get your conditions right, I found it quite hardy, quite reliable. Yeah. And, you can propagate by seed, you can divide it, you can take root cuttings. Yeah, it's quite versatile how you can propagate and grow it. Needs cold winters. So where my farm is, it's 850 metres on the edge of the dividing range. So, cold winters, frost, snow, loves it.
And
comes from eastern
seeds. You can get seeds in Australia for
most people who've got the plant keep the seeds to propagate it themselves. There are a few places where you can buy the plant. So All Rare Herbs, I don't know if folks are familiar with that. And Tony Hoseman, Golden Seal and Smudge Sticks in Gmail, he's down in Victoria. He's been a pioneering grower for this plant. So that was one I decided to really focus on. And another one that folks might be more familiar with, arnica. People familiar with arnica use it as a salve, bruises, contusions. Yeah. Now, you would never have thought arnica would be something that would disappear. But for professional herbalists wanting to get like the medicinal tincture that they work with, supplies of that have dried up. Once again, a bit of the COVID transportation mishaps. And also a lot of it is wild harvested in Europe. And the people who do the harvesting, that whole cohort of people, they're age 70 plus. So, no prizes for guessing what's happening there. People get old, people die, they get out of it. There is some growing in Europe. There is some growing in New Zealand. But once again, like Golden Seal in Australia, there's no, what could you say, commercial or semi-commercial growers of scale. Once again, we're dependent on imports. So it's fascinating to me, these vulnerabilities that we have, and that there's this huge gap in the herbal medicine industry where we don't have our own suppliers for some of these key herbs. Now, there's some companies, PPC, Pharmaceutical Plant Company, that's based in Melbourne. They actually have their own farm in Tasmania, and they grow about 120 of their 120 species, different herbs down there. So that's an amazing company that's taken that on. But there's still, some key plants that they haven't tackled. So you could say that's one of the good things that has come in, a good/bad thing that's come out of the COVID years. Well, an awareness, I guess, how vulnerable we are for our medicinal herbs. Now, if you sat down and talked to any herbalist, they would say, yeah, we're environmentally aware, we're recycle, care, aware of the impact on the environment, all these things. But a lot of the medicines that are on their dispensary shelf, where do they come from? Who harvested them? Did they come from the wild? And this is not to blame anybody, but it's been a blindside to the whole industry. One of my jokes in one of my presentations is asking people what's more sustainable, the herbs on their shelf or the coffee they drink. And quite frankly, their coffee is more sustainable. I don't know if anyone's ever picked up a packet of fair trade coffee and read the back. It's quite amazing, grown in Bolivia at this altitude. We use this type of coffee bean. We treat it this way, that way, and it's under the fair trade banner. And when you look at some of the 2 words on it, sustainably grown, what does that mean? So I'm very passionate that we have our own herbal, our own homegrown industry of growing some of our key herbs. And to that end, I've started up a monthly subscription group for people who want to grow herbs and to support them and pass on my skills and knowledge so that, more people can take this up. And it's quite amazing that this year, a lot of initiatives have started. You've got the Elder Tree up in far north Queensland doing a lot of herbal education. My own herbology hub started. And then there's a lady down in Victoria who started up, I think it's called Herb Connect or Herb Market. So it's a brokerage for people who are growing herbs and want to sell their herbs. So that's that's a panorama of more on the professional area. So bringing it back down to you folk and your everyday life, there's a whole lot of things you can do to engage with herbs and use them in your life. Even if you just went to the health food shop, got a bottle of Rescue Remedy, got a jar of calendula cream, and got a jar of arnica cream, if there was any left there, or a vial of arnica pills, that's an instant natural medicine first aid kit.
Well, let's just talk about that point.
Sure.
So tell us what arnica does. I grew up a little bit using arnica, but it's been a long time. So arnica, what does it do?
Arnica, right. So that's used for bruises, contusions. So if you have a fall, so what it does is it actually completes the healing process of the bruise. So when you have a bruise, your circulatory system, whether it's a vein or little capillaries, the vessel walls burst or eruption, okay, and blood seeps out into the tissues, and that gives you your blue-black color. So what arnica does is it stimulates the circulation and all the other activities in the skin tissues to resolve that injury, which is really important, because if you have a bruise and it's not resolved, it can be a focal point for a lot of complications later on. So that's a potted picture of what arnica does. And if you're using it, say, homeopathically, it has an extended range to its usage, more than if you're just using the cream. So if you're out in the garden and you're working hard, you're digging holes and you're pushing wheelbarrows and lifting rocks, and you get to the end of the day and you're feeling a bit sore and sorry for yourself, a low potency arnica homeopathic is just perfect, because it helps your body in that whole restorative process of the muscles or the tissues or whatever that has been worked hard during the day. Mid says, was it love it? Arnica is amazing. It certainly does. Sue's saying, does herbs and creams expire? Have arnica which just has an expired date? Don't worry about the expiry date, okay? Those commercial creams, they are designed to last in that jar for quite a long time. So legally, they have to have an expiry date.
Yeah, okay.
And if it's a homeopathic, it never loses its medicinal power.
Yeah, I found one in the back of the cupboard and I thought, oh, I haven't seen that for a while, but I'm not going to show it out because it's arnica. So I thought,
yeah, keep it, Sue. Use it. It's still good. It's still good.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's arnica. So that forms a very important thing. Also, if you're using the homeopathic, you can use it to treat yourself for shock. So like if you're feeling bruised physically and emotionally, homeopathic arnica is a good remedy. So that's the whole nature of the plant. And even where it grows up in high alpine areas in the mountains, is like a clue to its usage and its specificity. So up in the mountains, high, there's falls, rocks. It's quite an amazing plant. So that's potted history for arnica. I'd highly recommend everyone have either the homeopathic or a pot of arnica cream in the home, in the car, in the travel bag.
Now, if you're using it as a homeopathy, you just put a couple of drops under the tongue, right?
Correct. Or sometimes they're in sugar pills and you put a little sugar pill under your tongue. Yeah. And let it dissolve. Yeah. Right. Now, Rescue Remedy, made from flower essences, by Dr. Edward Bach in the 30s. That, the uses for that are endless, because we often overlook the impact that shock has. I'm sure all of us have had a bit of a car accident at some stage and felt the shock that happens after that. Rescue Remedy, you get some bad news, Rescue Remedy, you fall off your bike, Rescue Remedy. And even if
you go on a plane with tot loss, you'll take Rescue Remedy.
Rescue Remedy all round. Rescue Remedy on the house. Yeah. It's great stuff. Now, the other one I'd recommend, calendula cream. Any kind of cut, scratch, abrasion, wound. Calendula is brilliant. So those three will get you a long way. And calendula is often written up as though, you just use it on little scratches and cuts and things. Well, it's got a scope that's far bigger than that. Now, the guy who set up homeopathy, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, he would take on a remedy and he would go through a process called proving, which means he would get a healthy person to take the remedy, and it was like take it to excess, and then that person would manifest the symptoms that remedy would cure. Is that clear for everybody? It's almost like a controlled poisoning, if you could use that word, but it was pushing the influence of the plant or the mineral on the person to the extent that they exhibited the symptoms that remedy would cure. So he had a friend, Dr. Franz, and he was a bit cunning because Dr. Franz, when he was a younger man, had a mill accident. And in those days, a mill accident usually meant some kind of appendage of your body went through cogs and wheels or something, or you get battered, bruised, and whatever. And on Dr. Franz, it was his legs. So he lined up Dr. Franz. He said, look, okay, we're going to do a proving of calendula. So here's the thing. I want you to take it, so many times a day, and I want you to write down meticulously what happened. So Dr. Franz did that. And they actually had to stop because it brought out all the wounds and the soreness on his legs from when he'd had the mill accident. And it brought it out to such a degree that it almost became infected. And then they stopped. And then Hahnemann could see the range that you could use calendula on. So the whole point of that long convoluted story is don't underestimate calendula. It's just a household standard. Everyone in the household get trained. Cut yourself, scratch yourself, whatever. Calendula. Where's the calendula? Put it on. And it speaks for itself when you see the rapid healing that happens. So calendula is, pardon me, it stimulates the microlymph system. So you're getting all your white blood cells coming to the site of the injury when you use calendula. It promotes the tissue growth, so you're getting a regeneration of the tissue that's damaged. And some of the more experienced herbalists say, traditional herbalists have said, when you're using calendula, no kind of suppuration will occur there. So you won't get an infection. Highly unlikely that you'll get an infection if you're using calendula. That's the extent of its power. Yeah, very, very simple plant.
Can it work retrospect as well? If it's an old injury, is it too late once it's healed over?
Yeah, so we're talking a cut, Kelly, or a bruise?
Yeah,
or...
cut that might scar.
Look, I would still give it a go. Because sometimes it's surprising what the plants can do to almost like pick up the healing process and complete it, even though it's been a long time since the original injury. Yeah.
Because sometimes if you've had a injury that's healed over, the area is still a bit discolored while it's still doing that healing process. So in that case, would you use calendula or would you use arnica?
Very good. Very good question. Now, I was giving a workshop and I was talking about arnica, and a lady said, oh, I bruised myself on my arm and that area is still, like she said, that like the skin tissue was still firm. And I said, well, the healing process is not resolved. Okay, put arnica on it. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? It's like it's got stopped and it's not been able to complete the process. Now, if you had an old, any kind of old scars, I would still try calendula on. Yeah. Well, I thought of something and it went straight out of my head. But anyway, that's all right.
But I love those three that you've talked about because they are so typical in everyone's household, aren't they? They're just so common.
Bumps, shock, cuts, it's standard fare for everybody. And it's a great way for people to start using herbs and to see that they work, like the proof of the pudding. You're not having to take on any kind of complicated theory. You don't have to go to a night school or do a course or sit an exam. Just get those things at the health food and put them in the household, put them in the car, put them in your travel bag, use them. Once you see what they do, you're hooked, you're in. You know the power then of those plants. That's the most powerful way to engage with herbs.
So Chris, just a question, please.
Sure, Mids.
If we grow those plants ourselves, wouldn't we need huge quantity to actually, like, so for example, for a cut, you could pick the flower and put the flower on. How would we use that if you grow a couple of arnica plants in a pot around the house? How can we use it?
Righto, good. So if you want to have some of those plants in your garden, I would say go for calendula, okay? Arnica it's a bit more of an involved process to grow. Rescue Remedy, that's a flower essence is made from 5 different plants. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but for straight out practicality, ease of use that you can grow in your garden, just about, most areas, maybe not in the tropics, calendula. So calendula, we're talking Calendula officinalis, the English marigold, not the African daisy or the African marigold. So make sure you get your plant right. So if you want to get seeds from Eden Seeds or Diggers, they will sell you the right species. So you want Calendula officinalis. So you have that in your garden. It grows really readily from seed, and it will self-seed. It's a beautiful plant. So you collect the flowers, right? And dry them. And you can infuse them in olive oil. Or you could get the flowers, collect them, fill a small jar with the flowers, fill it up with vodka, okay? Let it sit for a month, strain it off. You've got calendula tincture. Or, you fill it up with oil, you let it sit for a month, you strain it off, you've got calendula oil, infused oil. And you can use either of those on your wounds. The oil is probably a little bit gentler. The tincture can, it's a bit severe and can sting, but both of those will work. So that would be an easy way to have like a first aid plant in your garden. Yeah. Does that make
Sorry,
sense,
what was it called? Calendula what?
I'm going to type it. Pardon me. I'm going to type it in the chat. The
Yes,
scientific
please.
name.
And
So
while
if
you're
I-
typing, are those the 3 then that you concentrate on in your education? You concentrate on teaching those 3?
That's I actually have a little digital course on my website that goes through those 3 really thoroughly. In my the main thrust of my education at the moment is the Herbology Hub, which is fostering plant growers. But a while back during the COVID years, a fellow herbalist and myself collaborated, and we put together a product called Herbal Medicine Secrets Foundation course. So that tackles 10 different herbs that are easy enough for people to find and to grow. And we cover the whole thing from identification, the name, what it looks like, how to grow it, how to make something from it, and how to use it. So that's on my website.
And then they mostly medicinal herbs, or
they are all medicinal herbs. Yeah, 10
right.
different herbs in depth. So
nothing
what I'll
that you're
do,
eating then, not your eating herbs.
Well, actually, funnily enough, where appropriate, there is some recipes there for some of the herbs that you can eat. So I've just put my link pop address in the chat, and that has a link to website, all sorts of bits and pieces there. So
why don't I bring up that website and we can take a little look
Sure.
around, and
Great. Yeah.
look at that. Okay, so for those that are aware, are you north or south of Canberra?
Southeast from.
And you've got a beautiful website here. So you'll be able to go there and have a look at the skincare, and also there's a lovely video, the courses that you do, and also the blog posts. So
Yeah, so there's quite a bit there for people to have a look at. So I just finished a webinar the other week on June the 13th, and it was a special one about Golden Seal, free webinar for people to come along. And that was when I launched the Herbology Hub, the subscription growers group. And there'll be another free webinar probably in about 2 months' time. So I'd encourage people to get on the newsletter on my website, usually down the bottom left corner. there's the box where you can put your email in and subscribe, and that way you can keep up to date with what I'm doing when there's different webinars and things. So yeah, I have done a whole series of in-person workshops and talks. That's sort of taken a little backseat at the moment while I'm doing the Herbology Hub. And yeah, I got into the skincare from, I went to Pindari Herb Farm. I don't know if you folks have ever heard of it. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. The guy who founded it passed away. But it was like a week-long intensive learning about herbs, learning how to make things from herbs, how to make tinctures, salves, creams, face creams, the whole bit. It was amazing. And I use his recipes for my skin cream, and I grow all the herbs that go into them. So yeah, and they're all made from first principles. Yeah, oil, emulsifying
What's first
wax.
principles?
Okay, so nothing is pre-processed. So if I'm making a cream, I'm using the oils, the emulsifying wax, the water, the glycerin. I'm mixing it together, heating it up, blending it. The tinctures I put in are all from plants I've grown, alcohol I've brewed, the tincture I've made. So you could say, in other words, it's sort of like the ultimate handmade cream. Does that make sense, Mids?
That's extraordinary. You just can't
Yeah,
do
that's
that these
amazing.
days.
Yeah, you could, yeah, I know. I tend to get a bit, once you get into this world, it's like away you go.
Oh,
And you say, oh, I can do that. Why don't I brew my own alcohol? I'm sick of buying brandy and vodka at, full retail price and whatever. And then you buy a brewer and it's like, oh, this is great. I've got alcohol coming out of my ears and I don't even drink it. So, it all
no,
goes
it's
to the
just for your
plants.
tinctures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's so good because you're teaching others how to do this and then passing on the wisdom.
Yeah, that's so important. Look, there's been so many great herbalists down the years, and people, some of them write books, some of them do courses, some don't. And when some of these people pass away and they've not written a book or did a course or whatever, it's a tragedy. Whether it's decades of precious clinical knowledge or an in-depth relationship they've had with a particular herb or a remedy, that knowledge disappears. And I think that's a profound tragedy. So it's like I'm making sure I'm passing it on and encouraging, a whole new generation of people to get into herbs and grow them and do stuff. I mean, not that I'm going to disappear anytime soon, but you need to start and foster people. And it's part of our self-sufficiency. And I strongly believe it's part of our heritage and our birthright, that this whole, we've got hundreds of years of herbal medicine tradition, well, thousands really. And in fact, they found a Neanderthal body dated 60,000 years ago. They identified the herbs. They're all herbs we'd use today: yarrow, chamomile, and that's just that little bit, and we know the indigenous folk, they have used natural remedies forever, and become quite skilled at it. So it's promoting it so that it's got its place in our modern society. It's overlooked because we get so, we get too much, fall in love with our technological brilliance. And we saw that in the last couple of years, where instead of talking about how can we boost our immune systems, we all want to go and get a vaccine, or we're all told to go and get a vaccine. And well, what about our immune system? It's been here for over 3 million years, highly refined, highly adaptive. We just need to give it the right nutrients so it functions. So, herbal medicine's always been a bit on the fringe in these modern times, but, let's go and bring it back to the centre. Let's give it its due respect and importance. It's got a lot to give to us.
Oh, 100%, Christopher. You're the Tesla of herbs, and we need to have this information. Yeah. It's been so good, hasn't it, guys? Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Christopher? Because I think there is an art to this growing. I don't think everyone can just start with their seeds and just grow it, right? There's more to it than that.
Yeah. Look, I'd say start with calendula. It's pretty bomb proof. Yeah. And if you can't go with a seed, see if you can get a seedling. So I've got a question here. Oh, okay, that's from Mids, right? Thank you. Yeah, look, it's important. It's our heritage, and it's getting overlooked and discarded and discredited. We're in very tricky times, and we need to be self-reliant. I noticed some of your videos, Kelly, you had people there talking about canning and all that sort of stuff, and it's important. And herbs and knowing how to do some first aid repair on yourself is really important.
So good. Now, okay, I have a personal question.
Sure.
I injured myself a couple of weeks ago on some muscle, some soft tissue damage. Is that too far below the surface for herbs to kind of work on now? Have I left it too late?
Okay, I'd rub some arnica ointment in. Yeah, maybe depends if it's is it a tissue injury or is it still a soreness or what's going on?
Yeah, I'm wearing a moon boot. Yeah.
Ooh.
So I did it on my foot.
Come on. What you drop something on it? Twist, strain.
I jumped off my daughter's bunk, but not too far, just a step, and landed badly, and so underneath my foot.
Okay. Get the arnica cream on it.
Okay.
Every day. Yeah, because you could have bruised something. Something could be out of whack there.
Yes. Yeah, definitely bruising.
And look, and it's a good question, because look, if that will do something for sure, but if it doesn't resolve it, I would go and get someone, whether a chiropractor or a good masseuse, to make sure everything's back in the right order. Because your foot has a whole intricate lot of little bones, and if you get those out of order or bruised or whatever, very painful.
Yes, and more common than we think, these injuries. So
absolutely. So Andrew's asked, where do you post your products to? Anywhere in Australia, Andrew. No troubles.
I love every week that we have Aussies on doing things for Aussies in our own backyard. This is so good. It's so good.
Look, it's great. There's people doing all sorts of amazing things, and they're not on the national news, on the telly, or in the newspaper necessarily, but people are doing their thing, their special thing.
That's right. And that's why we love to bring them together on a Tuesday and at the summit, because we communicate with each other in our communities and really support each other and find out what's out there. Without these platforms, people it's very hard to find out what's going on and all this good stuff.
Yeah.
So
look, that's true, Kelly. And it's part of a key thing of developing our resilience is having connected communities of like mind.
Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. Well, we are just on time to wrap up tonight, but look, we'd love to keep in touch, Christopher, and I know you've got a lot more stored, but we should need to go back to your website and order that arnica from you. Don't worry about the supermarket, because we all know about supermarkets. They have to do whatever they got to do to stay on this shelf. And I'm all about the skincare. So you got to go back to botanically based products from the source, and you can't get better than what Christopher's talked about, and using everything from nature. So it's wonderful. So I'll put your link up along. You'll be able to, if you're watching the replay, you'll be able to come back to that and check out all your offerings there and your courses and things. So
Thank you, Kelly. Pleasure to be on tonight with everyone. Thank you very much for your questions and your time spent with us.
Thank you. I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah. There's a lot more going on, but yeah, that's an introduction. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think if I'd known about Christopher before this, I would have definitely had him on the summit. So I'll have to keep you in my back pocket for next year, Christopher. And
Look,
also the festival.
happy to come
You'll have
back.
to come along to our festival in October. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Christopher. This
Thank
was
you, that was fabulous.
amazing.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Look after yourselves. Get those 3 products in your first aid kit. That's your homework.
Yeah, definitely do that.
Great homework.
Got to find the seats first.
Oh, no, I'm just going straight to the website.
Yeah, me too.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Okay. Night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Welcome to the My Self-Reliance Expo. It is a wet, rainy day in April, but we are having the best time.
We're just doing the chocolate wheel. Actually, no chocolate prizes, but spin the wheel for $1. Win prize up to $50. Fantastic. All benefits going to My Self-Reliance.
And 3. We have taken the best of the speakers that we have on our Hawinda Community Connections every Tuesday night, and we've brought them all together in this one place where people can experience all the good things that people have been sharing with us about. Ladies, and I have a little gift for you.
I'm Natalie, and I just made these homemade candles just the last couple of days.
It is an absolute winner of the day, despite the rain.
Reporting for Team Kelly here. She does amazing work. Loving it.
This is just the beginning for My Self-Reliance and bringing community together, because we're all about learning, education, workshops, highlighting people's skills and talents so that we can all learn from each other and cooperate in a way that, you know, we maybe haven't seen before. And certainly people who didn't think that they had skills to share are really shining in this space. So we're going to go from the expo. July we'll have a summit, so that'll be 20 speakers over 10 days, and then come spring in October we're actually going to do a 2-day festival. So that will be another opportunity to bring people out to the sunshine and get amongst it and really envelop it all over 2 days. So we're so thrilled that you can be here and enjoy the fun. And if you missed it, we hope that you come again to the next one. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much.